It's March Madness time. Well, have some Red Bull, some coffee.
It's a perfect way to show how crazy these past couple of months have been.
They are the big contenders for the tournament. Haven't lost a game yet. I like Arizona.
Arizona's a good team, a tall team, a fast team.
Incredibly stacked conference, the SEC.
Baylor won the game, and that's a 18-year promise, like you said. And Scott Drew, that's an incredible story for him. And
I just feel there's going to be a big upset, and
so yeah, I think it's an easy pick.
Hi, this is Andrew Utz, the winner of the Outsiders Opinions inaugural Bracket Challenge, and you're listening to Kevin and Austin.
what's up, y'all? Welcome to our 2024 March Madness Perfect Bracket Challenge. You just heard a liner of what you can win. The winner did not win it last year because of March Madness expert Jake, and that is the guy joining us. He is here once again. We're so glad to have him. Make sure you've checked out all the videos. We've been doing a top 25. Jake, we're glad to have you here.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man. I'm excited to be here back from last year. Last year was fun, but this year is going to be just as fun, maybe even more fun. So I'm happy to be here.
Yes, and I'm not sure if I'm not hearing rock and roll music, but I'm hearing the music of a man, Austin, who predicted Auburn to win. But I was like, he did this with San Diego State. Should I go? And he waved me off, and Auburn won. And Austin, what do you have to say?
I mean, I always ended up being right, but that's not the most important bracket. This is, and let's get right into it.
Yes, so we're starting with the East, and for the record, you can see us picking the bracket down here at the bottom of my screen. So follow along. This is the bracket that you'll be competing against. You get two chances, but we are going to spend a lot of time on this because this has a lot of our favorite teams, your favorite teams. Where do we want to start? UConn, the team we chose last year, or do we want to start from the bottom? Where do we want to go?
Let's just start from the top.
Yeah, let's start
Okay. All right, so UConn versus Stenson. Do we have to spend a lot of time on this?
No,
We don't need to spend a lot of time on this. UConn was my baby last year. I believed in them and they won it last year, and they have come out and somehow been just as good as they were last year, maybe better. Stetson is a good team. They won their bracket, or they won their conference tournament. They shoot well from three, but I mean it should be a cakewalk for UConn. I hope it's it. I hope it is. Anything can happen though.
this would be one of the biggest upsets we've ever seen, and I don't think we get to spend much time on it because it's not realistic.
All right, so two, and I also agree UConn, but y'all overrule me. Overrule me. Now we got FAU versus Northwestern, 8 versus 9 seed. I'll turn it over to the March Madness expert.
March Madness expert. I love that. So these are two teams that are kind of solid. We've been negative about the Big Ten all year, but I've always kind of had a liking for Northwestern, and Austin also likes Boo Booey. Um, and so we like some of the players they got, but their defense is just abysmal. And I don't know if you know Austin, but their defense they're like bottom third in the entire nation in giving up field goals and three pointers. They give up a lot of points, and or they allow the ball to get scored quite a bit. And Florida Atlantic is the 16th ranked offense in the nation. They score a lot of points, and so I'm gonna have to go ahead and take FAU for this one.
Yeah, this is a tough game. I definitely like Northwestern more than I like the majority of the teams in the Big Ten, especially because, like you mentioned, Boo Booey. But FAU has that experience. Like you said, they're a great offensive team, and I think they're the pretty easy selection here.
All right. All right, we're going top seeds in the first two. Now we go San Diego State versus UAB and the San Diego State lover, Austin.
I love them for a good reason. They're an amazing team. Their offense is better than it was last year. Jake may not agree with that, but statistically, they are. They have a guy in Jaden D who averages 21.1 points per game and 8 boards. He's a dog, and I don't think UAB has anyone that can stop him. I take San Diego State easily.
So Austin's definitely right. San Diego State is going to win this game. I mean, that's my opinion. Anything can happen in March. I'm going to keep reiterating that. We could be incredibly wrong, but we don't think we're wrong in this situation. Last year, Austin was very, very high on San Diego State, and I didn't know much about them. And we ended up not having them go very far. We had them go to the Sweet 16, but they didn't. We didn't have them go to the Final Four. Well, they went to the championship as Austin predicted, and so he's definitely right. San Diego State's defense is phenomenal, but I think he's very, very wrong in that their offense is better. Yeah, Jaden Ledee is a phenomenal player. Probably the best. They didn't have a player like this last year. However, they shoot 31% from three, which is abysmal. And watching them recently, when they need to get a 3-point shot, they can't get it. And there are other teams in the nation who don't shoot amazing from three, but they're still able to get threes when they need it. And I haven't seen San Diego State do that. And so I don't think their offense is phenomenal this year, but they will beat UAB. And Austin is right about them being a phenomenal defense. And so San Diego State wins this one.
All right, now we go to Auburn versus Yale. Who goes? Who wins?
Well, I'll let you go first, Kevin. You haven't gone first yet.
Oh, I like being tiebreaker, but I'll go Auburn.
I think that's a good pick, Kevin. Auburn is a really, really good team, and they're peaking at the right time. They're hitting their stride. Janai Broom is a phenomenal player. They are really good on both ends of this of the court. They score a lot and they play really good defense. Austin, did you know that they are second in the entire nation in opponent field goal percentage allowed?
Yeah,
In the
that's
entire
impressive.
nation.
Their defense is amazing.
And Yale, while Yale does seem like a sneaky offense or a sneaky team, they aren't really good at shooting. They're not much of a 3-point team. They don't score the rock a lot, and so I think Auburn's defense is going to be too much for Yale to handle. And I think Auburn pulls out the win here.
I picked Auburn to win the SEC for a reason. They are very high in the net rankings. They're fifth right now, 27-7. They have no quad 2, 3, or 4 losses, and this loss would be in the quad 2 or quad 3 variety. And I just believe in Auburn as a team. They take advantage of turnovers. They take advantage of teams that aren't that great, and I think Auburn easily wins this.
All right, so we're all in agreement. And yeah, Auburn has great players. I'm not sure how about a team, but yeah, they'll beat Yale. Now we go to BYU versus Duquesne.
Yeah, this is a good matchup. Duquesne proved a lot of people wrong with their run in their conference tournament, but they have a phenomenal defense up and down the board. They have really good stats and numbers, especially on the defensive side. They don't give up a lot of points, but that's an A10 competition, and the A10 aren't scrubs, but they're not the Big 12. And BYU is top 10 in the nation in not turning the ball over. And that's very valuable against defensive teams, especially when you play Big 12 defenses all season. And so if you're going to be top 10 and not turning the ball, an assist to turnover ratio, in a conference like the Big 12, I think you've earned your stripes. And so I think BYU wins this one in a close, tight matchup.
I did a
Awesome.
lot of research today. I've really struggled mold on this option. I really like Duquesne because of their defense, because of the great run they have. They have 2 guys who score 15 plus points a game. And BYU has a very impressive track record this year, but they're not really hot. They're 5-4 in their last 9 games. That includes losses to teams like Oklahoma State and Kansas State, 2 teams that did not make the tournament. They have a lot of even scoring. They're a great team, but they don't get many steals. They're 261st in the nation in steals. They're 243rd in blocks. And while that's not everything to a defense, their defense could be better. I'm going to go Duquesne. I think they're a hot team. They won their conference tournament. They're playing well. Recently, they're on a now 7-game or 8-game win streak. And 8-game win streak after beating VCU today. And I think that 8-game win streak will continue.
That's tough
So
because I want to say real quick because BYU is a team that I've been following for a while now, and I've really, really liked them because there was a time when they were like really good. Um, their offense moves so well. They have such good plays. They set off ball screens, and I love the way they pass the ball. And they also rebound the ball at a phenomenal clip. They're top 25 in the nation at rebounding. And that's so valuable, and that's why I'm picking them. But this is such a difficult matchup. And like Austin said, Duquesne is the hot hand. And BYU, while that Oklahoma State loss was a while ago, it was towards the beginning of that 9-game
Yeah, it
skinny
was the
game.
first of the 9.
Yeah, BYU also came back and beat Kansas with Hunter Dickinson, and they seem to be inconsistent a little bit, but when they're on, and I think they're going to come to play uh, for their first game, and so that's why I'm picking BYU.
All right, so I'm the tiebreaker in this, and I'm going to side with Austin. I was feeling Duquesne too because of their defense. I'm not a big fan of BYU because of the lead they blew against Iowa State. That would have been huge. But yeah, it is a tough matchup, but I'm feeling Duquesne. And now we go to Illinois versus Morehead State.
Jake, you and I are going to agree on this one. I know Terrence Shannon can score, but give me Morehead State.
More, more head, man. This look, Illinois just won their conference tournament today against not Purdue, against Wisconsin, a team that is not very good and weirdly beat Purdue in the semifinals. I want to say Illinois is bottom 5 teams in the entire nation in forcing turnovers. Uh, they are so bad on defense. And Morehead State, let me read something for you. Morehead State is 5th in the nation in field goal percentage defense and 9th in 3-point percentage defense. They don't give up points. And yeah, I know they're in tougher competition. They're not very tough competition. But we don't think the Big 10 is tough competition either. Morehead State also rebounds the ball 39 rebounds a game. They give up the 8th least points in the entire nation. And while they're not the most amazing team from the offensive side of the ball, this is one of those trap games. Yes, Terrence Shannon can score, but we saw Illinois play Big Ten teams where they would get beat by backdoor screens, some of the most basic cuts in basketball. And so they rely too heavily on one-on-one scoring, and against good defensive teams, you can't just ISO on every play. And so I think this is one of the big upsets of the first round. So I'm going to pick Morehead State.
All right, quick question. I agree with you, but Jake, what'd you say? What'd you say about Morehead State when you started talking to him? Can you just repeat that phrase?
Morehead State.
Well, dang it, missed it. So hope y'all got a chuckle out of that. Now we go to Washington State versus Drake.
Kevin, I'll let you go first
Yeah,
on this one.
Go ahead, Kevin.
I'm feeling Washington State because of their. I'm riding teams with defenses, and they're a team that has beat Arizona twice. And I know they did lose to Colorado State, but from what I'm reading in the summary, it says their best attribute is defense, and I'm just feeling we should ride. I'm gonna ride defensive teams this year.
That's a solid pick. I mean, they don't give up a lot of points, but they don't force a lot of turnovers, I will say. Um, and a team like Drake, you don't necessarily need to force turnovers like crazy. But they are in the top, percentage in college basketball in 3-point percentage and field goal percentage. Um, or Drake is, and Drake is a solid offensive team. Um, and they brought back DeVries from their heartbreaking loss last year against Miami, and so I'm kind of on the fence for this one. This is a tough one. Washington State impressed me in Austin a little bit earlier in the season, not long ago. But Drake's coming off. They're kind of a hot hand right now, coming off of a big win against Indiana State in their conference tournament. So I'm gonna have to go with Drake. They're finally gonna get over the first round hump from last year that everyone thought they were gonna win. So I'm gonna sneak Drake in here for this one.
This is so tough. Washington State definitely has the better defense, but Drake has the better offense. Tucker DeVries is amazing. His dad's obviously the head coach. They have size with the 6'10", Darnell Brody, who's a senior inside with Drake. They were impressive this year, but I am worried about them on the defensive side, sort of, because they don't get any blocks. They're one of the worst blocking teams in the nation, only averaging 1.6 blocks per game. So they struggle in that facet, but they also don't get blocked much. They don't get stolen the ball all that much. They're very good at keeping the ball in their hands. They shoot extremely efficiently from the field and from three at 37% from three and 48% from the field. So I'm going to agree with Jake here, and I'm going to go Drake.
All right.
This
So we
was
got Drake. Yeah.
This was so tough, though. What? Go ahead, Kevin.
Well, I was just going to move on. So
It's
we're
so
about to finish up. Yeah. The East. Is there any much to talk about with Iowa State? I know they're your darling, Jake.
I got this one. Iowa State is they're my team. Like you said, they're my darling. Now, I would like to say that there's no chance Iowa State loses in the first round, but anything can happen. South Dakota State is not an amazing team, but they've scared some people in the past. I don't remember if it was last year or the year before, where they were one of the best 3-point shooting teams in the nation. And so San Diego State has given some people. And did they get blown out? Who remembers this? Austin, do you remember this?
Yeah, it was when they had Mike Daum. It was a while ago, though. I think it was 2019 when they had Daum, and Daum was averaging 25 points per game. They ended up.
Yeah, I don't remember that. And so I love Iowa State, and I don't see any scenario where they lose this game unless ridiculous injuries occur within the next 4 or 5 days. 4 days, and so Iowa State wins this game.
I think South Dakota State's an underrated offensive team. They average a fair amount of points per game, but this is Iowa State. South Dakota State has never seen a team like Iowa State. They are so feisty. They are so deep as a team, defensively and offensively. There's no way that Iowa State blows this.
All right. So we got Iowa State, and then Iowa State versus Drake. I feel Iowa State.
That's a great pick, Kevin. Iowa State. Now Drake is a solid defensive team. Not a solid defensive. They're a solid offensive team, but Iowa State just proved that they are probably the number one defensive team in the nation. They went up against Houston, who was widely considered, especially by us, including us. Houston was considered the best defensive team in the nation, and they just put 76 on them and held them to 41, or however many points they scored. So Iowa State's the number one defensive team in the nation, and that travels. And they also, the past 2 games, yesterday they hit 42% of their threes, and the game before hit 50% of their threes. So they're kind of hot offensively too. The Ken Palm is going to tell you that they're 55th offensive efficiency or whatever, but they're not playing like it right now. So Iowa State, I think, wins this in a blowout.
I'm going to disagree with Jake just in the fact that I still believe that Houston is the best defense in the country. But Iowa State wins this game, not to scare Jake at all. I definitely think that Drake will come and play well. I think Tucker DeVries is a hard man to stop. But again, this is a top 2 defense in the country. I don't think it's much of a contest.
All right, now we got Duquesne and Morehead State. Now, where do we want to go? Who wins?
Austin, you go first, since I didn't have this particular scenario in my mind.
Okay, so Morehead State, 8th best defensive rating in the nation, along with the 33rd best offensive rating. While Duquesne struggles on offense, and with Morehead State's defense, it could be tough. Morehead State's a hot team. I'm going to take Morehead State. I think a 14 seed makes it all the way to the Sweet 16. I like their team. Riley Minix has yet to play D1 basketball before this year, and this year he's coming on hot. 21 points per game, 10 boards, while he's shooting efficiently 55% from the field. They have some height. Deontay Miles, their starting center, is 6'10". They also have a 6'9" guy off the bench, and Riley Minix and Eddie Ricks are both 6'7", 6'8". They have height. They have size. And so I think Morehead State wins.
I'm gonna agree in this particular scenario. This is a Morehead State team, like Austin said, is phenomenal defensively, um, and they're solid offensively, and they get a lot of rebounds. They're such a good rebounding team, and so and they can also hit threes on occasion. And so yeah, in this scenario, I'd have to go with Morehead State as well.
All right, now we go with Auburn versus San Diego State. Jake, you go first, and then Austin. I'm just gonna let you know. You got. I'm gonna. This is your ball.
This
Your pick gets my vote. Austin
I appreciate that.
Austin.
this is a very very difficult matchup. This is a dog fight. This is Janai Broom versus Jaden Ledee. Um, Jaden Ledee. So I'm a big New Mexico fan, and New Mexico is one of the best defensive teams in the nation. Um, and Jaden Ledee was making them very very angry on the interior. Um, they were able to hold him in check for the first like 15 minutes of the game, but he eventually started, pulling ahead. Auburn is far and away the better offensive team, far and away, and they're a good defensive team as well. But there's something about these two teams that stumps me. They're both built for March, which is why I was really angry that both of these teams were put in the same region, and not to mention meeting in the second round. But ultimately,
Say it, Jake.
I don't I think I'm gonna have to go ahead and say somehow San Diego State wins this game. Um, Auburn, they're both so good. They're both really really good. In any other region, I have Auburn maybe in the Elite Eight. Um, but San Diego State's defense is outstanding, and I think I don't know, man. Auburn is far and away the better offense, and you know what? I'm actually gonna have to go with Auburn. I think it's tough. It's really really tough. I could see either of these teams winning, but they're both really good defensively, and Auburn is far and away the better offensive team. So I'm gonna have to pick Auburn. And
I,
I know Austin disagrees with me.
you do know. And let me just put some stats behind it, not just my bias. Auburn this year against teams in quad 2, 3, or 4, they are a combined 24-0. But you remember, they're not a 30-win team. They're 27-7, which means you do the math: 3-7 versus quad 1 teams. They are not that great when they play very very tough competition. San Diego State is that. This is a dogfight. I'm Auburn is a great team. Like Jake said, I'd have them in the Elite Eight, potentially Final Four in other matchup scenarios. But I've trusted San Diego State so far this year and last year, and I'm going to sit with him. Jalen Ledee's that guy. I believe he's the better between him and John I. Broom, even though Broom is amazing in his own right. But I have to go San Diego State.
I'm gonna have to agree that Jaden Ledee is better than Janai Broom. He will win interior battles. He is bigger. He is quicker. Um, and I think he's better defensively. But up and down the board, though, I think outside of Jaden Ledee, San Diego State's missing a lot of offense, and that 31% from three is not calling my name. Um, Last year, San Diego State was good. They shot 35% from three, which is doable. You can go to the Final Four of the championship doing that, especially if your offense is kind of hot right now. But Auburn's on a streak. They're on a 6 or 7 game win streak in the SEC, which they're not chumps. The SEC is not a chump conference, and they just got the same amount of rebounds as the top 5 offensive rebounding team in the nation in Florida today. And so they're a hustle team, and as well as San Diego State. But their offense, they shot 50% from the floor today, and they shot 80% from the free throw line today. And so that tells me that they're meshing well as a team right now. And as well as San Diego State, they went to the Mountain West Championship as a 5 seed. which we knew was going to happen. But this was a this is definitely going to be the tougher matchup for me to pick. But I'm going Auburn just because they're the hot hand and they're better offensively.
San Diego State has a better record against
Well,
Quad One teams. They have more wins. They have a better win percentage in those games. I trust them when it comes to playing the best teams in the country. Kevin.
yeah. Well, you trust San Diego State, and this is your heat check. You've been hot. You're hot, right? You were hot with Auburn. You were hot with San Diego State last year. I'm gonna trust you, Austin. So San Diego State.
I appreciate your faith.
And for the record, I could agree with you guys in 2 hours. Like, this is a tough matchup, but just right now, San Diego State's offense is not doing it for me. They're not pulling out wins that they need to win, and on the offensive side of the ball. Yes, defensively they're really doing it, but they were against good defensive teams. Against New Mexico, they struggled to score. They went on a little bit of a run at the beginning of the second half, but they still weren't amazing offensively during that run. And so I just think right now Auburn has completely obliterated their opponents for the past 6 games, and I just think they're really meshing well as a team. So that's why I'm going with them.
Yeah, no, it's tough. Like, yeah.
I would like to mention really quickly, like, this is what you want to see out of a 4 versus 5. Like, you want a matchup that this is this close.
Mhm.
So while I hate seeing it, I hate seeing this being the matchup because I could see Auburn winning this game. It's going to be a great game to watch, and I can't wait to watch it right now.
Yeah, it was something where we talked about like, oh man, this is tough because we both like Auburn and San Diego State. But yeah, we're going now to UConn versus FAU.
Yeah, UConn wins this. There's Austin and I were talking recently, and we were agreeing on the fact that we have never seen such an impressive uh, team after winning a championship. Um, they lost Sonogo, they lost Andre Jackson, Joey Calcaterra, Jordan Hawkins, Naheem Aline, 5 guys who contributed to a championship run last year, 3 of which were their 3 main guys. Uh, and they're better than they were last year statistically. Uh, everyone's stepping up, everyone's filling roles. And Austin and I were talking, and we looked at it like I asked Austin, is it too good to be true that they're this good? And we landed on the fact that there is no flaw to their game when we watch them. And the only reason we would have to not pick them is on the off chance that they have a bad day. Which you can't bank on, especially with teams like this, with coaches like Danny Hurley. And so I think UConn wins this one. The FAU is good, but I think I think UConn wins this one pretty easily.
I completely agree. This FAU team has gone through a lot of troubles this year. They've had really high highs, but also some really low lows. This UConn team has not had that. This UConn team has been utterly dominant. And since March of last year to this season, they've been unstoppable. And I'm going to have to be very, very, very persuaded in any matchup to choose against them. And this is definitely not that.
All right, so are you going to choose against them when they face your beloved San Diego State?
Yeah, we can go right to that. I'll mention that San Diego State last year beat the best team in the tournament, according to where they were seeded. They were the number one seed, Alabama, last year. They beat them. Jake and I talked about that last night and how there was their 2 weaknesses were that their best player, their primary scorer, was a freshman, and there was no precedence for a guy leading a primarily offensive team and being that ball dominant to win a championship. And so I didn't believe in them. And the other problem is that when they get slowed down, they were bad. UConn has no weaknesses. I want to convince myself that San Diego State can win this game, but I want a perfect bracket. And realistically speaking, UConn's the right choice.
Yeah, this is really interesting that the committee decided they wanted a championship rematch in the Sweet 16 this year. Because I very well could see that. I could see UConn playing Auburn or San Diego State here, but I don't think it really matters um, because UConn is that good. I mean, Klingon is such a force on the interior. His step up from his freshman year last year was so impressive, and Alex Caravan has moved so well without the ball and with the ball, and they cut so well. And while San Diego State reads this stuff against other teams, they're phenomenal defensively. They communicate so well, and they're able to move and switch and rotate. UConn runs offensive sets that require constant movement. And I know that that's not something San Diego State can't do. They definitely can do that. But at what point does San Diego State's lack of efficiency on offense bite them in the butt? And I think UConn is they're not a schmuck defensive team. They're very good defensively as well. And so UConn wins this one, in my opinion, as well.
All right. So we got UConn now, Iowa State versus Morehead State.
This is, like you said, Kevin, my darling, Iowa State. I think Morehead State made it to this point in our bracket based on who they were facing in competition, and they will not go further in this bracket due to competition and who they're facing. They're facing the number one defensive team in the nation and one of the hottest teams in the nation offensively. And so Iowa State wins this one, and I think it'll blow out a pretty easy win.
This Iowa State team's different, and they're coming for blood. Morehead State's never played a team like this. Iowa State pretty easily.
And for the record, I want to point out about Iowa State. They went ahead. Austin and I talked about this earlier. They went ahead and won their conference tournament and almost 30 balled. For 30 balled Houston, it was pretty bad.
Close.
It was close. And Houston is the number 2 ranked 1 seed. And based off this seeding, the committee deemed Iowa State the worst of the 2 seeds, including Marquette, who lost to UConn in their conference tournament, Arizona, who didn't make it out to their conference tournament, and Tennessee, who also did not make it to their conference tournament final. So I feel like Iowa State has a little bit of a chip on their shoulder because they were deemed the last of the two seeds, of the 4 2 seeds, and so I think Iowa State's going to come out like Austin said for blood, and Iowa State's going to ruin some people's days.
All right. So we got a 1 and a 2 seed in the East. And just to make sure, now we're moving on to the lower part of the left side of the bracket.
We'll do this one.
Okay, got it. All right. So the winner of UConn versus Iowa State.
I'm gonna let
I'll
Jake,
go ahead.
I have to let Jake talk because he's gonna have to.
So these are. So this is the toughest matchup I'm gonna have to predict. Iowa State, like I've mentioned already, they're hot. They're out for blood. They're the best defensive team in the nation, in my opinion. And if they're not, they're the second best defensive team in the nation. UConn has not faced a defense like this, but Iowa State has not faced an offense like UConn. Yes, UConn is really good, and there's virtually no flaws to their game. I have to go. This is my gut. This is not analytics. This is not like this and that. This is feeling. I just feel that I like having to play San Diego State in the way that they play basketball. And Austin and I talked about this recently. We talked about certain teams, certain roads to the Final Four are much more difficult. And UConn having to face FAU and then San Diego State and then Iowa State is a lot to handle. Especially considering they would have to play San Diego State and then on a 2-day turnaround play a just as good defensive team in Iowa State. And so I think based on gut and feeling and a little bit of bias, because I like them. I like them as a team this year. And my bias stems from thinking that they're a good team, not because I have any ties to Iowa State. But I'm just going to have to go ahead and lock Iowa State in as repeats are so difficult nowadays. And We haven't seen a repeat in 15 years, and UConn is one of the best teams we've seen try and repeat. But I think defensively, they haven't seen a team like Iowa State, and Iowa State will come in this scenario, comes off of a game against Morehead State. Yeah, there's something to be said about momentum and winning a tough game, which leads you to winning another tough game. But Iowa State, they're firing on all cylinders right now, as well as UConn. But my gut feeling, I believe in UConn, not UConn. I believe in Iowa State like I did UConn last year, and so I'm picking Iowa State.
If this was I know it couldn't be, but if this was a first round matchup, if this was a Final Four matchup, if this was any time that they didn't have to go from playing one of the best defensive teams in the country to a top 2 defensive team in the country, I would probably say that UConn wins this game. But I'm going to go Iowa State, just based on the fact that this is such a tough route. I believe the committee chose this in the pure fact that they didn't want a back-to-back champion. This is the perfect bracket to not have a back-to-back champion, and it's going to be so tough for UConn to pull this off, where they face so many good teams. They face FAU, who's definitely not who they were last year, but that's still a team that made the Final Four last year. Then they play San Diego State, who they had to face in the final. Then they go Iowa State, one of the hottest teams in the country. It's tough, and if UConn won this game, I would not be shocked in the slightest. I'd probably be more shocked that we were right if Iowa State ends up winning. But I'm going to go Iowa State.
Yeah, I agree with y'all. It like Jake mentioned it earlier, it is tough to do back to back, and y'all have talked about the games they would have to get here. So I would also pick Iowa State, but you both chose Iowa State. So that's first part of our bracket. I forgot to mention it in the intro, we're doing 2 parts. So sorry to interrupt you, Kevin. That's actually not true. Hi, y'all. What's up? It's Kevin. Of course, after the video, as that would ruin the time continuum, but we were actually doing 4 parts because we spent a long time doing this, and we don't think it's fair for y'all to listen to an hour and a half podcast. Even though for the people that do, we appreciate you. You're an amazing person. Hope everything goes well for you in your bracket. So we're doing each by region, and then in the final part, the 4th part will be when we talk about the champion. So be on the lookout for this. So this is part 1. Expect part 2, which will be in the bottom bracket, as I hinted before. Thank you for listening to Outsiders Opinions.